Hey Tyler, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Good. Hey
Thanks for
everybody. This
setting
is
this
uh
up.
this is Tyler and Jesse. Tyler and I we met at Rythmia in Costa Rica. We had an ayahuasca experience together. Um, Today we're sitting down and just kind of talking about life before, life during, and life after. Tyler, why
Mm.
don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Well, thanks for setting this up. Appreciate it. I live in Indiana right now. I'm originally from Utah. And I guess as far as introduction, I'll kind of introduce why Rhythmia called to me rather than generic, this is what I did for work, etc. So
Okay.
I grew up very strong in the Mormon faith and honestly had a great upbringing. But I left the church when I was 30 years old. And that was really hard for me and my wife. Not so much hard for my kids. I have three boys, but we had dedicated a lot to our faith. I lived in Siberia for 2 years as a missionary. My wife went to Greece for a year and a half as a missionary. We had some responsibilities, they call them callings in the church that were fairly high up. And we were very, very invested. So leaving that left a void in my life, and I got a lot of my what I call meditation and connection to the source through the church. And I didn't realize that through a lot of prayer, fasting, study of scripture, communion. And when we left the church, I lost all of that, and I felt a void. I knew that I made the right decision, but I was trying to fill the void, that peace that I felt from being in the church in conjunction with truth. And I couldn't seem to find it. I would jump from business to business. We moved out of Utah to Indiana. We started traveling the world. We spent 3 months living in Costa Rica. Then we went to Hawaii, then Australia, then Thailand and Vietnam and Dubai and Hong Kong and Bali and Egypt and Greece. And we were living all over the world. And I would have these little moments of happiness and peace, but never what I was looking for. And so it eventually, fortunately, it didn't lead me down a dark place other than in my mind, but it led me to meditation. And meditation is where it started for me, but it didn't fill the void for me. And so I read a book, a couple books, biographies. One of them was from Steve Jobs, and he talks about LSD. And then I read a book about mushrooms and something about the effects that it, these studies have from people in a clinical space called to me, which was weird because growing up as Mormon, that not only are they illegal where I live, right? But
Mhm.
it led to this weird convergence in myself. I call it cognitive dissonance of on one end, it was calling to me and I could see it could be a healthy thing. On the other end, I had all of these fears and uh, potential downsides of doing a drug like mushrooms.
Yeah.
Eventually, I did do it out of country, and I felt a very, 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 very small inkling of what I felt at Rhythmia, and I felt something different, but not what I needed. I felt the void was there, and so I kind of just dropped it. Went back to living and just doing my best in meditation. And I was on a call with a friend of mine who had been to Rhythmia, and I was just telling him everything is so good in my life, but I don't feel good in here, and
Yeah.
I can't figure it out. I promise I'm trying to figure it out. I really am,
Yeah.
you know. And he he said, this is going to sound super, super crazy, Tyler, because I know you. I know how clean of a guy you are. But there's this place that really helped me called Rhythmia. And you should probably look it up and see if it calls to you. So I looked it up. And that day, I called and booked a spot for like 2 weeks later, as soon as I could possibly get down there. And that's what led me to Rhythmia.
That's beautiful. Follow-up question for you.
Go ahead. Or do you want to
Um,
share what called you first, or you lead it, however you think is.
okay. I'll share my story. Before I forget my questions for you. How long had you been absent from the church? You said you left when you were 30. How long was that time before you found Rhythmia?
I think we officially left when I was 31, so
Okay,
5 years ago,
five
and I
years ago.
started having a lot of doubts and studying the doctrines of the church
O-
6 years ago. So it took
Okay,
about a year for me to leave officially.
okay. During that time, you felt that void, and that that word void is something that I really find interesting, and that's actually something I have found along in my journey post Rhythmia is don't if you allow void in your heart or in your mind, it allows an opportunity for something not so pure to enter your mind or your heart. And we'll kind of dovetail into my experience here before Rhythmia. Um, I I was through a lot when I was in my teens. I got somebody pregnant when I was 18 or 19 years old, and I ran away from it, and it became something that I was always hiding, but it was always right in front of me. But then I coped with using drugs along the way, and I would like to call myself in some ways a functional drug addict because throughout my 20s, while I was using, um, I was doing very, very well in my career. And I was thinking to myself, well, I can do it, and then there's all these Hollywood movies out there like Wolf of Wall Street, for instance, where he's doing blow throughout the whole movie, but he's still raking in cash. He's living the high life. And I feel like Hollywood kind of presents this picture that's not actually reality. And it, for somebody in their 20s who is very influential, I was thinking to myself, oh, I'm just like that guy, and I can just kind of get through it. And, I had my religious background. I had gone to Catholic school, kindergarten through eighth grade. And I, I was presented the opportunity to go to church on a weekly basis through my school, which I did. And I resented it because at the time it didn't feel right to me. And even to this day, I'll say that going to church doesn't mean that you can't not have faith. Um, and I'll explain a little bit more of that later on. But as my journey continued, my life was falling apart for the last 3 years. After COVID, especially, laid off of my job, got a new job. But then at this point, I'm floundering. I've got a wife, 3 kids, and my wife leaves me, and for good reason, to be perfectly honest. And she had her faults, I had my faults. It's a two-way street, and I didn't deal with it correctly. And when you say the word void, in my 20s, that's where that void was, is I had allowed things to enter into my mind, my soul, my body that weren't pure, weren't with good intention. We talk a lot about intention at Rhythmia. And it turned me into somebody that I learned who it was, but somebody that I didn't like who I was.
Mhm.
And the way that Rhythmia kind of came about was I think it was in December of 2024. I had had a long night, and that next morning I was saying to myself, I had at that point finally hit rock bottom, what I believe was rock bottom. And I was telling myself how useless I am, what a piece of shit I was, um, all these negative things. And I looked over at my remote. I rarely watch TV, and I turn on Netflix. And I'm like, oh, the Aaron Rodgers documentary. And I've always been kind of compelled by Aaron Rodgers because, although controversial, I don't really actually know how controversial it really is, the things that he says. So I watched the documentary, and the episode 2 of the documentary was him doing an ayahuasca ceremony. And I was thinking, and he was talking about it afterwards. And I was thinking to myself, wow, here's somebody that makes 30, $40 million a year, has all the success in the world, and he is saying to himself, there's something missing. there's something missing. And it made me realize, holy shit, like I could be super successful and I could still be really unhappy. And right after I watched that episode, I I called Rythmia, got it scheduled, and we just happened to have the same week scheduled, you and I,
Yeah,
and the 49 others. I think it was 51 total. And that's not by accident. And as we continue this conversation, it's it gets more and more surreal about how all of this came together.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we're at Rhythmia. We get there. For me personally, um, they say before you go, you have to be clean 14 days before you go. I didn't follow that. I had a problem. I mean, I was at the airport right beforehand doing whatever, and then I hop on the plane and um, I go to Rhythmia and get to Costa Rica. I hop in a van with three strangers. I also got a room at Rhythmia with a three bedroom, two other strangers, people I don't know, and I wanted to make myself as uncomfortable as possible. So I hop in this van in another country by yourself. You don't know anybody, and what's funny is you always have like those first judgments of the people that you see, and I don't remember what they were, but I remember I was being super judgmental and I shouldn't have been. It's funny how we all naturally are.
Yeah.
And we get there, we get checked in. So here's your juice tokens for the week. The beautiful thing about Rhythmia is they serve amazing farm to table food. They provide these juices for morning, afternoon, nighttime. And then we have classes during the day before the ceremonies, kind of going over uh, what we're about to experience. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna go into this experience thinking, okay, I'm gonna start seeing some things. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I might see something that I don't remember happening that's really gonna fuck me up. And I'll kind of pause right there in day one arrhythmia. We're in that class. We're hearing Jerry's story about, his journey through that guy with the Congo and all those things. What at that time in that class, and I remember you raised your hand and you had mentioned the mushroom story. Like I've tried to get there. I can't get there. What were your thoughts in that first class?
Well, I had a desire, right? So I did mushrooms a couple times. The last time I did it, I did 10 grams of mushrooms, which is like four
That's a
times hero
that's a
dose
lot.
or triple hero dose. It's a lot. And
Uh,
uh, still didn't get where I needed to be, not even close. And I did have one realization though on that trip.
yeah.
I need to surrender. And so I I tried. I tried and I tried and I tried and I couldn't.
Hmm.
And so since then I tried something also out of country called bufo, which is essentially like frog. It's a
Okay.
certain frog where they take
Yeah. I've heard of
some
that.
of the poison or the skin and you
Yeah.
smoke it. And this is the first time I'd smoked anything in my entire life.
Right.
And like I just don't smoke, you know?
Yeah. Right.
And I did like 15 hits out of the pipe and I didn't feel anything at
Sure.
all. Now, this drug is supposed to be like the rocket ship drug. It's quick, 15 minutes. Like the videos I watched in it, they're like they hit,
Yeah.
lay down, pass out for
You're out of
15.
it.
It's a forced surrender.
Yeah.
So I was like, perfect. That's what I need. You know, if there is one thing that I learned from mushrooms is that I need to surrender. And
Yeah.
so nothing happened. I was really disappointed. I was really
Mhm.
sad. So when I got back to the States, I tried something called ketamine that my
Oh,
brother actually um, invited me to a clinic
yeah.
when I was in Utah,
Yeah.
and and I did it. And that was interesting because I saw a lot of visuals, but it was like I was watching uh, a show on a screen, right?
Okay.
But I couldn't surrender to it to get any insight from it.
Right.
And And so I had this build up frustration of I don't want to be a junkie. I don't want to be perceived by myself or others that I'm doing these drugs for the intent to get high.
No.
Right? I want truly the intentions at Rythmia, which were interesting because it show me who I've become, merge me with my soul at all costs, and heal my heart. I was like, that is exactly what I want. I felt numb
Yeah.
through through so much of my life, emotionless even. We'd have a huge successful venture or an exit or sell a house or something and get these big checks, or our kids would do something amazing in school and everyone would be excited and I would be excited on my face, but inside feel absolutely nothing.
Yes.
And people, and same with the negative, right? These things where I should be in deep despair, death, uh, loss, and I would feel nothing, absolutely nothing. And it was confusing for me. And I knew that it wasn't a void that I needed something else to fix. A lot of people think that we turn to drugs to fix it, but
Hmm.
it's not that we want a drug to fix it. We just want ultimately reconnection with ourselves to just be able to feel again. And that's what I wanted. So when I raised my hand and I said that, that was my intention behind, hey, I'm nervous. The ayahuasca is not going to give me what I need because
Yeah.
I've tried all these other things.
Right. Yeah, that's a beautiful insight when you mention exciting things happening in life, and while the expression on your face maybe recites that excitement, inside you're almost like, this is kind of an intense word, but dead.
Mhm.
And me personally, listening to your stories of your intention to use drugs, it's funny how all of our intentions are a little bit different. Mine was to chase something that I could never catch. And I guess yours was in a way also, but for you, it sounds like you were looking for insight and you were looking for, some sort of enlightenment to fill
Mhm.
that void that you were looking for. Yeah.
Ab-
So, okay, we go through our classes on the first day. We're all beginning to meet each other. Everybody at this place, including the employees, are the most beautiful, wonderful people in the world. Um, it's so I've never been to a place before where um everybody was like perfect in their own ways too. Everyone has their own style, their own demeanor, everyone was an individual, but as a collective it was beautiful.
Mm.
So we get to the first night, and the idea of ayahuasca is you go up with an intention before you drink, and it's in a little shot glass and you have a drink. So I have my first drink and I go back to my bed in the Maloka and I lay down and I fall asleep. When I woke up, which was about 3 hours into it, I'm hearing everybody throwing up and dry heaving. I'm hearing crying. And on the first night, it was driving me nuts.
Mm.
And it's like the sound of puking was making me sick, and I didn't have that problem personally. I think I puked once on night one. Other than that though, um, the week before Rythmia, my mother went into the hospital, and we talk about ayahuasca giving you what you need, not what you want. What I was wanting, or what I was thinking was going to happen, is I was going to go back on my bed and I was going to have all these crazy visuals and I was going to meet my 5-year-old self, and I was going to see things that I didn't want to see, you know. But that wasn't the case for me personally. What I did have happen to me on the first night is my I went through a scenario in my mind, a consultation, if you must, of my parents dying, because my parents have been my rock for the last 3 years through this separation, divorce. And what's my life going to be like when my parents die? And had I not gone through that process of what my life looks like afterwards, I think that would have been detrimental to me personally. And of course, it's not like I'm going to be happy when it does actually happen, but I've mentally already kind of gone through it. And it's odd to me how there's always things on our mind that maybe we hide or mask. And it must have been clear on my mind before I got there that my parents' health is deteriorating. I might just only have 10 more years with them. And make every moment worth it. Time is something that we measure with a clock, but at the same time, no pun intended, uh, enjoy every second. And I do that with my kids now. And that was nothing something I never did. So my first night personally, I go through that and I had some other realizations through the week, but we'll kind of break this down one night at a time. Give me your story on night one.
Okay. I guess to preface, one thing I realized is I'm going to jump way forward and then
Okay.
wind a little bit. When
Okay.
I came home, my wife was totally against the means. She was supportive in me going, but some crazy things happened to me while I was at Rhythmia,
Hmm.
which I can share. But when I came back, everything that I did was through her eyes seen as bad, right? I would go and meditate, and she'd see me almost as if I was doing drugs in front of her.
Sure.
And I would go write in my journal and she'd see that as bad, right? I'd go on a walk, she'd see that as bad. I'd laugh with my kids, she'd see that as bad. I'd dance and she'd see that as bad. And one thing, it's a lot healthier now, right? Just but like you had a hard time coming back into the real world. I did too. And mostly with my wife, just not understanding what I went through. But one thing I realized is the means doesn't matter. And what happened on day one, day two, day three, day four, day five really is a cool story. I like sharing it and I like listening to it,
Yeah.
but that isn't what prompts the change.
Right.
Just the means. It's all it is the means. And it's going to be deeply personal and deeply different for every single person. But what comes from that is what can be beautiful or harmful. What was beautiful was for most people at Rhythmia, the means was crazy for everybody, but the result was amazing. And that's what I like about ayahuasca so much. So the means for me day one wasn't great. I had been on a lot of flights the previous couple of weeks. We had a dog, a puppy that got hit
Oh,
by a car and passed away like 3 days before Rhythmia.
oh,
I was in San Diego when it happened, so I took the first flight home to be
yeah.
with my wife and kids. And after a couple of days, I came. Am I still here?
You're still there. Yes. Yep. You're good.
After
You're
a
good.
couple of days, I came back. I went to Rhythmia, and I was the opposite of you, right? Those 14 days before, very, very clean. No alcohol.
Yep.
Uh, that's about all I struggle with, and caffeine.
Okay.
I don't struggle with alcohol. I maybe drink alcohol a couple of times a month.
Sure.
So it's nothing ever that's like been a vice for me, and I'm super grateful for
Yep.
that. But caffeine is.
Okay.
I was at the point I was like two energy drinks a day every single day. 2 o'clock would hit and I'd be like, okay, where's my energy drink?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was really hard for me to get off of. And I did get off of it. But when I had to fly home to be with my kids, we did a red eye flight and I got right back on caffeine right before. And I was eating airport food,
Oh,
hamburgers. And so when I got to Rhythmia, after all of the sitting, all of the time changes, all of the stress going on with the family and our puppy, I was physically bloated. Like I looked like I was almost pregnant. Like it was really weird. It's happened a few times in my
mhm.
life, but
Yeah.
I could not get it out. I couldn't even like go poop.
Wow.
So the first night for me was I just felt this massive stomach ache. And I felt that I needed to go to the bathroom. And I went multiple times and I couldn't get anything out.
Really?
But I could feel like the medicine was just churning my stomach.
Yeah.
And then the eventually the medicine came up into my throat like I was going to puke and did this huge U-turn, went right down back down into my gut. And I went to the bathroom and I just had waterfalls of diarrhea. I thought it would be like this big, massive blockage, right?
Yeah.
But it was waterfalls of diarrhea. And that's really what my whole night was the first night. I had 5 cups, but I had some insights throughout that pain.
Yeah.
One is I need to be way more careful what I put into my body,
Yep.
way more careful. I also realized that I had gotten in this habit of telling little white lies. When I went up to the shaman to get my 5th cup, he asked me what cup it was.
Hmm.
And I knew it was my fifth, but I told him it was my fourth. I didn't want to be turned away because I felt like I needed more medicine. But it wasn't the medicine telling me to get more, it was me
Yeah.
saying, I'm not getting what I need. I'm gonna get more. I'm gonna force it, force it, force it. And one insight I had throughout the whole week was feel it,
Yeah.
don't force it.
You
And
hadn't surrendered yet.
yeah, it wasn't until the last night that I was able to surrender. And that was a pretty crazy means too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was essentially my first night. And I realized that especially the last few months before Rhythmia, I'd gotten in this habit of telling these tiny little white lies
Hmm.
that were harmless.
Yeah.
I was doing it regularly to inflate my own status in the world. People would ask how much I sold a business for, or how many properties we had, or how many businesses I was consulting for, or how long I lived in a particular area. And I would take the reality and I'd inflate it just a little bit, and it became a habit. And I
Boost
was
the ego.
ashamed. I was ashamed by that. So those were my two biggest insights from the first night.
That's an amazing call out. And that's also something that I had struggled with as well is one in particular that I struggle with tiny white lies is, and at this point we talked about procrastination, I believe, before we hit record, but if somebody would ask me to do something, I would not do it right away. And then they
Mhm.
would follow up with me and be like, "Did you do it?" And then I would say, "Yeah, I did it." And then I would run to my phone or my computer or whatever, get it done, and then it would be done. But that is a tiny white lie.
Yeah.
And that destroys trust, not only with the person that you're lying to once they find out, but to yourself. So
Yeah, absolutely.
there's our insight for night one.
Mhm.
Morning two. So the ayahuasca ceremony ends around 2 or 3 a.m. and get back to our rooms, barely sleep. 6, 7 a.m. comes around. We hit yoga, have breakfast, jump into some more classes. And we're all wondering to ourselves, half the room is like, what did I get myself into? The other half is thinking, this was awesome. And then everything in between was fear and all sorts of questions. And there were people in our group that were really going through it, really going through it. And I personally, being a judgmental person, I'm thinking to myself, selfishly and um, very coldly, like, come on, get out of it. And that wasn't fair to those people for me to feel that way. Later on in the week, as we talk, I'll explain how I felt that I redeemed myself with that, just with sending positive energy that way instead of just being judgmental and negative. So um, we go through our day, we go through our classes, and we're told drink as much as you can, drink as much as you can. Night two rolls around, Tuesday night. In my opinion, that was the most fun night for me personally. I had 5 cups like you. Um, it felt so. A little note on me personally, I never went to college like a university. So I never went to big college parties. I was never one that ever went to parties, and I was kind of an outcast growing up. And I had that fear of missing out syndrome, I think it was. And on Tuesday night, I drink my first cup, I fall asleep again for 3 or 4 hours. And um when I wake up, the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is like, okay, let's have another. Let's have another. Let's have another. And then for me personally, while maybe you were searching for when you do those 10 grams of mushrooms or the 15 hits of toad, for me it's like I just want to get higher. I just want to get higher. And I'm still in that mode, like just get me higher, just get me higher. So I'm drinking down cups, I'm drinking down cups. And to get back to the whole college party, fear of missing out part of it, the whole night felt like a college party to me.
Mm,
And I was laughing the whole night. I couldn't stop laughing. And um and part of it too was I had the realization on Tuesday night that I had a really solid, good upbringing, and I felt so blessed, and I was so happy, and I was so grateful that I really didn't have any traumatic issues when I was a child. And I like it was like a night of celebration for me. And
yeah.
I got to experience that college party, even though everyone around me may have not been feeling the same way that I was feeling. It felt like a party to me that I had never been to.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool feeling for me. And me and some of the other guys, like, you know, it was also weird when I would whisper something, they would whisper something. I feel like we could hear each other talk even when we were whispering. That's the way I felt personally.
Yeah.
Again, not a whole lot of visions, more so consultations again, and just continuous journaling in my notebook. Tuesday night soundtrack, also on the Maloka, was complete fire. It was the best music I've ever heard in my life. I've been trying to search for those tracks and I can't find them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if half of that was just the effects I was feeling. It I could have heard it and just it's just not the same, you know.
Yeah. Curative
Um,
feeling it
but
or
yeah, but overall on Tuesday in my path, show me who I had become. I had, I had become a liar and a drug addict. And that's what I learned by night two. I had learned who I had become. Night one, it was how am I going to get through a very traumatic period that is inevitable? Night two is who I became. And and that was kind of the conclusion of night two. Give me your night two.
can I give you night two and night three?
Do it.
Okay.
Do
Because
it.
I think they go hand in hand.
Okay.
So night two for me was just a lot of pain and misery where I I came into it with a massive migraine and I ended with an even worse migraine.
Okay.
And I felt that pain throughout. And on my second cup, I think I had another 5 cups that second night. And I started to get a visual, but it was very, very fuzzy. It didn't seem to have any meaning. And I was really tempted to call it out, kind of like I did when I did ketamine.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this meaningless reel of visuals that had absolutely no meaning. And I was getting frustrated when I was using ketamine. I'm like, come on, like stop it with the show. Like, give me what I need. Like, give me the insights, you know?
Yeah.
I was just about to start calling out the medicine when instead I thought to myself, thank you for showing me this. Like, the medicine is trying.
Yeah.
And as soon as I felt that and said that to myself, I felt the medicine, ayahuasca, kind of bloom, just like you would if I were to give you a really nice compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, inside, you're going to feel warm, you're going to
Yep.
smile. And I felt that same sense of gratitude and ego in a way from the medicine. And so all night was me just, thank you for showing me that. Thank you for showing me that. And it was the most visual night. And I had an insight that the medicine is way more intelligent than you or I.
Oh
And it
yeah.
has so many more forms of communication than we are used to. And it was doing its best. It was communicating with me. I just couldn't freaking understand what it was saying
Right.
at
Right.
all. And I had that realization. We were drinking this poison that had this amazing compound in it that was being released, and it was doing its best to communicate with us. And for me, it just needed me to hang in there. It was almost like it was going through this checklist of different communication methods, and it hadn't found what I could understand. Yeah, it was speaking all these different languages, and it hadn't spoken a language that I could interpret. And so I was able to, in a sense, surrender to that waitingness, and that sense of impatience dropped, which was healthy for me. But I felt all of this pain, especially in my head and in my gut, and I couldn't puke. That's why I kept getting more cups. I was like, man, if I drink more of this, it tasted so nasty at that point. I know I'm gonna puke. And so I'd get a cup and I would dry heave, but I wouldn't be able to get anything out. And
Yeah.
towards the end of the night, I saw so many people in the middle dancing, doing these amazing dances and just being so happy. I could hear you laughing, a few others laughing.
Yeah. I was
I was
laughing the
like,
whole time.
why can't I do that? I
Yeah.
want to do that, but why can't I do that? Right?
Yeah.
And I just felt this overwhelming sense of sadness come over me. And I started crying, which I haven't done in a long time. I hadn't been able to in a long time. And I realized, and I had the thought, this is who I've become. And it was partly true that I had just become unhappy.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a lot of that emotion out. And the reason I want to go into the third day is I felt that unhappiness through the entire next day
Yeah.
into the next evening. And when I had my second cup, I still felt that unhappiness and I felt like I needed to puke. And I took that next cup and I started dry heaving. And this lady named Raven came over and starts fanning me. And I look up at her and I just felt even more unhappy, right? Because she was giving me all of this comfort.
Yeah.
And partly because of my age, partly because of the trauma that I've had in religion, partly a lot of other things that I can't even articulate because I don't know. My relationship with my mom and me is okay, but not to the level where she would be able to hold me anymore and give me the comfort that I felt right then in that moment. And I was very grateful for Raven, but also very hurt at the same time that I was doing my very, very best in life. And as a result of me doing my very, very best, I was doing things in oppositions to someone else's beliefs that it led to this wedge in our relationship. So I went back to the bed, just feeling this sense of unhappiness. And throughout the rest of the night, I had this merging with myself as a kid, where I would go back and forth between being me as a 36-year-old and me as a kid, and also my son, Liam, who's a 9-year-old. And I felt all of the pain that I felt as a kid, as an adult, that my son felt when we lost our dog. And that was kind of the theme of the night was when we lost our puppy, I didn't cry, right? I was like sad for everybody, but my
Yeah.
son was laying on my lap and I was rubbing his head and I was just like detached from the situation
Yeah.
until that night. I felt it. I felt it as if I was a 9-year-old. I felt it as a 36-year-old. I felt it as if I was a little kid. And my hands were like my mom, right? Rubbing my head, my back, my body,
Yeah.
my arms.
Right.
And I could hear in my thought as if it was my mom just whispering it to me, like, it's okay. Like, you'll be okay. Just get it
Yeah.
out, you know?
Do
And
you feel as the man of the house before Rhythmia at least that you had to maintain that strong man visual for kids and wife when a tragedy happens in the house? You're there for comfort, but at the same time you can't show vulnerability.
mhm.
You never
No,
felt that?
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't feel that.
Okay.
But that was the result of what I was happening to me.
Sure. Sure.
Is I became that person, but I didn't want to.
Right.
I wanted it more, just like they did. I
Yeah.
needed it, just like they did.
Yeah.
At the end of the night, I felt like I became a little kid again,
Cool.
and I was so sad that even my mom, through me, wasn't comforting me. And one thing I did as a kid is I sucked my thumb a lot.
Yeah.
And so I I just put my thumb as an adult, right? I just put
Yeah.
it in my mouth and I started sucking on it. And as soon as I connected my thumb to my mouth, like that like feeling of pressure and suction, it was just perfect. And I was comforted and I fell
Yeah.
asleep for the rest of the night. So that was my third night.
I would do wonder, you know how they say like the ring finger is direct vein to the heart, and that's why you wear a wedding ring on the ring finger.
Mm.
When kids suck their thumbs, is there, I don't know the science to it, but I wonder if there's something in the thumb that does give some sort of relief or some sort of sense of comfort. be
You know
something
what you
that,
should try?
what's that?
You should try sucking your thumb.
Should I try sucking my thumb?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like just put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
And the way that the thumb
Yeah.
lines up
Right.
with the top of your mouth,
Yeah.
and the way you can get this perfect, no, put it all the way in your mouth, like all the way in your mouth. And just start sucking on it as if you're a kid.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know. I'm willing to try it, but I don't feel it.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe it doesn't work for you, but for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah. It gives you
right,
that.
it's like it's this connection where my mind
Yeah.
removes itself from the pain
Right.
and goes right
Right.
there to
Yeah.
comfort.
Okay.
It doesn't make the pain not happen, but it comforts me through the pain. I know it's there, but it dulls it so much because something so comforting is part of me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I have a lot of respect for you, saying that in front of all those people at Rythmia. I thought that was awesome. For me personally, night three was my least favorite night. Um,
Yeah, I remember that. I was right
yeah,
next to you, dude. I
I
was right
slept.
next to you that night.
Yeah, I slept through most of it, and when I woke up, I didn't feel the greatest. I never danced up until day four, and we'll get to that, or maybe it was day five. I don't. I have always been made fun of for whenever I have tried to dance.
Mhm.
And I think that's a common thing for people to say to men if they try dancing. It's, oh, you look stupid, you look lame, all these different things. And well, we have this hard shell exterior, like it doesn't bother us. It actually does because then when the next opportunity presents itself to dance, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, people think I look stupid. People think I look lame. It's
I think
really hard to loosen up
it's
when people
common.
make fun of you for that.
It's common to have people critique you on everything.
Yes.
The ones that hurt the most are when you're truly trying to express who you are,
Yeah,
and then you get critique on that. That hurts on a much deeper level than if you're just doing a project or a task and you get criticized for that.
you're absolutely correct. So night three is done, and we're presented the idea of night four, which is a different type of ayahuasca called yahe. And this ceremony wasn't going to go till 2 or 3 in the morning. It was going to go until the sun rose the next day,
Mhm.
and then some. And we did get a much later start. And one of the things that really stood out to me on the beginning of that night, before any of us drank, each one of us individually went up to the shaman and had a conversation. And he had asked, what's your intentions? And I had given my intentions. Everybody had given their own intentions. And so to give insight to anybody listening that is unfamiliar with the process, when the shaman says, come up to drink, that's when everybody comes up to drink. This night, on Thursday night, was a little bit different. He named off 5 names. I think you were one of the five, weren't you?
Yeah, I was the first one called.
And I'll circle back on to why I'm pointing that out. And I was thinking to myself at the time, like, I wonder why those five got picked out, and anyways, didn't think much of it. I had a half cup on Thursday night, and my heart had been healed, and I had been merged back with my soul. And I experienced something that I didn't think was possible. I died on Thursday night. I literally died. I died of a drug overdose on Thursday night. And it was incredibly powerful for me because throughout the process of that death and that rebirth, I had been reborn blind, and I kept my eyes closed for what felt like an hour, and I was using my other senses a little bit more. I was trying to really grasp the smells. I was really trying to taste the air. I was trying to hear the birds cawing from miles away. And then I was also giving myself perspective. Somebody that's blind probably doesn't have a porn addiction. Somebody that's blind doesn't see other people pointing at them and laughing at them. And ignorance is bliss. I went through that. And after I did that, I opened my eyes, and I was so grateful for my vision. And I was so excited that I've been given the gift of vision. And I shouldn't allow these distractions in my life that have previously hindered my relationships to stop me from being who I am.
Yeah.
Thereafter, I plugged my ears for what felt like an hour. Okay, now I'm deaf. Let's really use my vision. All of a sudden, the colors, and this is as the sun was rising, the colors on the trees, the colors of the birds, the colors of the flowers, everything was so vibrant. It was the brightest I had ever seen any color ever in my life. And I went through again all the disadvantages and then also the advantages of being deaf. You know, being and this is kind of a silly thing, but being deaf, I didn't have to hear bad music anymore. You know, but you
Yeah.
don't get to listen to good music anymore.
Right.
And again, I went through my whole list, and one of the shamans had come up to me and goes, "Okay, they're on last call. You want another drink?" And this was my final realization. For the first time in my life, I'm going to say no to
Mhm.
more.
Yeah.
And I was in control the whole night. I felt like I was in control the whole night, and I only had a half cup. And it was the first time in my life that I was in control. So the sun rises. We're all kind of, you know, giving each other some hugs, and really we're going through it at this point. Everybody's. It almost seemed like everybody just got done running a 26-mile marathon. It seemed like everybody was out of breath, but at the same time, everybody was at their peak of enlightenment at this point. And thereafter, we have a sit down with the shaman. I might butcher the name, Tito Juanito. I think that's what it was.
I don't know. I was curious,
Okay, I
actually.
think it was Tito Juanito. And this was the most beautiful conversation or talk I've ever heard in my life. And one of the students at Rythmia had said, "You called me up individually and like four others of us for the first drink. Why was that?" And his reply, and this struck me. And this is how this was my confirmation of what I was going through was extremely special. And this person that was leading this experience was also incredibly special. He says, "You told me something that I felt like you needed something a little bit different. So I did something a little bit different for you and the four others."
Mhm.
And he keep in mind, he met with 50 people and he listened to 50 other people. And by the way, it wasn't like you go up there, you say your intention, and he's like, "Okay, see ya." He had a full conversation with you on top of it. Like each conversation with each person was 5 minutes apiece. So, you know, simple math, 250 minutes, roughly, 4 hours, it felt like 4 hours. Maybe it was a little bit less than that, but
Oh,
it
now.
was a lot later that we had that first drink than it was the other nights. Like it was definitely dark. It definitely had to be 8 or 9 o'clock. Um, and he remembered your story, a couple others' stories, and he felt like you guys needed something a little bit different than what everybody else got. And that, in my opinion, was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. And it was one of maybe the 32 miracles I had witnessed that week. But it was an amazing one.
Yeah.
Tell me about night four for you.
Oh man. I'm curious if you remember anything about my experience. I've never asked anyone this who's been at Rhythmia. I remember my experience really well, and I'm happy to share it. But do you remember anything of what was going on for me?
Are you saying, well, I remember the mother not holding you apart. I remember the little white lies
From day four, from this night that you're talking about.
from that night. You
Mhm.
know, I,
Or
I I don't really
did
think
you
you and I
feel it?
crossed paths much on night four, did we?
I remember a couple times when we were both getting to get healed, we would make eye contact.
Yes, yes, we were sitting in the line together. Well, I think Mike was in between us, but yes,
Yes.
yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. All right. So I'll share my experience. I'm curious how fast other people felt the effect of the medicine that night, but for me, it was extremely fast.
Okay.
I had the medicine, and within a few minutes, I threw up. A little preface, just because I think it's appropriate. The story that I told the shaman was I didn't tell him any story. I didn't even tell him my intention. I just told him about my pain. Right. Ever since that night that I had the migraine, that shifted not just from my head, but through my entire body. As we had classes throughout the day, I couldn't sit in a chair for longer than a couple minutes at a time. I
Yeah.
had to stand up. I had to move around. I was stretching. I was doing yoga. I was in so much pain, especially right here,
Okay.
my back.
Yeah.
And I talked to Dr. Jeff after he shared like some science of ayahuasca. I was like, what can I do? So he'd say, go get another massage, go in the steam room, go in the cold plunge, right? And that kind of just held me at bay. But I was in so much pain that I was worried that it would affect my experience with the ayahuasca that final night.
Yeah.
That's just what I told the shaman. I said, I don't know what to do. I'm just in so much pain. Like, should I take some medicine? Should I skip tonight? What should I do? Um, and I'm guessing that was part of the reason he gave me this special medicine, right? Which I don't know what was special about it or not, but it was just right for me. That's
Yeah.
all I. As soon as I laid down, I threw up, and my pain all like it disappeared. Not permanently. It came back very, very strong, but it just totally disappeared, and I felt this sense of euphoria.
Yeah.
Like euphoria I've never felt in my entire life. Every cell in my body just was infused with this warmth and this peace. And I saw this visual of this massive beetle, like a scarab, not like a gross beetle, but like a royal beetle. It was like gold and blue and white,
Yeah.
kind of come up and envelop me in a shell. And my body just kind of came in and I just cuddled into myself into this peace. And it was this sense of the ayahuasca asking me, do you trust me? And the previous 3 nights going through what I went through at that point, I had done everything I possibly could to surrender, but I was still in control of everything, right? And I was still wanting, I was still hoping for more. And I just said yes out loud. And as soon as I said yes, I just started convulsing. Like at first, it started just like with my hands
Yeah.
and with my head, and then it was my leg, and then it was my whole body. I like
Wow.
my bed into my neighbor's beds. I was hitting them in the face. Just totally out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally out of control.
Right.
And a bunch of helpers came and pulled me up and took me outside and put me on a bed. And I went through what looked like a seizure, but felt different. I was in total mental control,
Yeah.
but absolutely no body control. I remember every single part of it, and I never passed out, never like had any seizure-like symptoms in my head, but my body, it felt. So I've done a lot of snorkeling in my life, and when I go up to like a school of fish, or when I watch a movie of sharks going up to a school of fish, if you thrust at it real quickly, they all scatter.
Yeah.
That's the only time where they'll like run into each other.
Right.
Other than that, they're pretty fluid together. Usually my body works together pretty well.
Yeah.
That was a time where it felt like a shark was attacking it and my body was going every single direction. My fingers were going different directions. My head was bouncing different than my body. And it looked like I was having this massive seizure for a long, long time,
Right.
minutes. And eventually uh, all of the helpers came out and they were trying to help me. They were talking to me, saying, hey, calm down. I was like, I'm trying. Like I was actually trying to
Yeah.
control my body and I had absolutely no control,
Right.
absolutely no control.
Wow.
And then eventually they start doing this chant on me. They pull up my shirt, they start spitting this fluid on me,
Yeah.
doing this chant. And I'm like, I know it's what I need.
Right.
So they do this chant, and I go on my back and I arch up and I look up and I open my eyes and I'm looking at the full moon. And I start like not vomiting, but just like whatever that is, like when you're hawking a loogie or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something stuck inside you. Yeah.
Yeah, like I felt something from really, really deep inside of me come
Yeah.
all the way up and sit on my lips as I was looking up at the moon. And then they finish this chant, and as they finish the chant, these fans go down. I just get thrust around, and I spit on this ground and I spit out this like pure white phlegm, really,
Interesting.
really thick.
Interesting.
And I just remember, and I stopped shaking. And I just remember thinking, like, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? They carried me over to the bed. And from the point that I said yes through the whole next 2 days, I had, you know how you were talking about your handwriting?
Yeah.
Like your body wasn't in control of it, it was just writing.
Yep.
That was every single action and every single word for the next 2.5 days for me.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single one. Absolutely none of it was me. And it was
Right.
all the medicine. And what I believe happened is I had an exorcism and I was reborn as well, like you, but not through a death, but
Yeah.
through like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. I lived in a cocoon of numbness for so long that I need to come out. And I was reborn and I didn't know who I was. Throughout the night, I had these downloads that were really, really amazing. And I felt them at a time. The first one was you are powerful. I guess before I felt you are powerful, I kept wondering, what is that? What is that? What is that? What is that? What is that?
Yeah.
Uh, I realized that it was doubt and it was so, so deep. And I guess throughout all the thrashing and stuff, I felt a lot of pain, right? And I felt like someone had reached through me and kind of grabbed my shoulder blade and was trying to yank it out through my back. Like I was like arching.
Yeah.
And when I did that spit, I felt like that came out of me, right? And it was doubt. I've doubted who I am my whole life, but I didn't interpret what that meant. What does it mean to doubt yourself?
Yeah.
Like, am I married to the wrong person? Am I gay? Am I supposed to leave my family? Like, am I in the wrong business? What am I doubting? Like, I couldn't figure out what I was doubting until throughout the entire night, I was doubting myself. I was doubting one, that I'm powerful, two, that I'm grateful, three, that I'm humble, four, that I'm worthy, five, that I'm enough. And I doubted my belief.
Yeah.
Leaving the church, I severed all belief. There was no belief. You can't believe, right? All left was doubt.
Right.
And so over the next 2.5 days was me going through a forced surrender. I had absolutely no control of my body, and it was crazy, but it was beautiful. And I've learned to trust the medicine, which wasn't the medicine, but through trusting the medicine, it connected me back to my essence and to the source, which I believe in now. Not in like an otherly godlike figure, but here,
Yeah.
me.
That spirit
And
inside you.
yeah, and that's what I was missing. That was the void. It was here all along.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. And to piggyback off of what you're saying on that final night, I had my realization also, that kind of kickstarted all my issues. And it was, I never faced my problem of the girl that I had knocked up in high school and I had never met my son.
Mm.
Um, so to dovetail into life after Rythmia, just a brief update. I had dinner with her 2 Mondays ago, and that was the
Wow.
first time I've seen her in 15 years. And she said the most beautiful thing to me. We're two people living two different lives at this point, and we're in different parts of our life. But you know what she said to me when she sat down? She knew only a little bit of where I had come from and what I've been doing for the last 14 years. But the first thing she said to me, "What's our intention of being at this dinner tonight?"
Wow.
And the whole week at Rhythmia was, "What's your intention? What's your intention?" And she, not knowing much about what my week was like, that was her question.
Probably
What's,
was asking, she was
yeah,
probably asking it with a different meaning, but the
yeah.
words resonated with you. Yeah.
And it really made me think because I was thinking, well, what is the intention?
Mhm.
Because personally, I don't want to be a person that's going to jump back into somebody's life and just expect that everything's going to be fine.
Mhm.
And this is something that her and I are going to gently work through and maybe eventually get there. And I pray about it every day. Um, but it was a super special moment. And since that time, I have been the most locked in with my life that I have ever been in ever. As far as my organization goes, my work ethic, my happiness, maintaining relationships. As a drug addict, you're a flaky person. Um, at least I was. And that isn't who I am anymore. And I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for the time that we got to share together in Costa Rica. I'm thankful for you hopping on this podcast to really talk through these things because it's also reminding me, and it might be reminding you about the foundation of our rebirth and really locking in on what's important. So since that time, I've I've been growing leaps and bounds, leaps and bounds, and overall, it's was the best experience of my life. How about you
God,
after Rhythmia?
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I hope everything goes well
yeah,
with you. It won't go. I told you this at Rythmia. I remember walking at night with you, right? It's not what you want, it's what you need.
that's
And
right.
but it will be beautiful.
Yeah,
It will be beautiful.
yeah, awesome. You have anything more to add?
My life post Rythmia has been all about me doing my best to maintain connection with the essence.
Yeah,
It was so beautiful, literally just closing my eyes, and I would have 20 thoughts come through my head. You need to do this, right? You talk about procrastinating.
yeah,
I'm the opposite. I jump into things without thinking and without really paying attention to myself and what's healthy for me. And then I burn myself out, right? Or I'm super, super busy, but extremely non-productive, or all these other scenarios, right? But ultimately, it's not me. It's not what I should be doing.
right.
And I've put my hands in a lot of cookie jars the
Yeah,
last year. Been a part of a lot of different businesses, a lot of different ventures, a lot of consulting clients, more than I should have, and more than I was comfortable with in here because I was just jumping in without having the right format to be able to juggle everything that was going on in my life. And there were times at Rhythmia where I would have these thoughts. Okay, you need to go eat now. Okay, I want to write in my journal now. Right? I was intact with my thoughts, just not my body.
yeah,
My body wouldn't move until it was ready to move. And when it moved, it did something in total opposition to what I was thinking. And that has been powerful for me because my essence knows what it needs, sometimes far before my mind does.
yeah,
I've been letting my mind control my life rather than my soul. And so that has been a daily practice for me is be patient, let the thoughts go through you. Don't jump on them, don't link, don't hold to them. And when something feels right, you will know and your body will act on its own accord. And that's been powerful because the actions that I take on a daily basis are a lot more powerful, a lot more impactful with my kids, spend more time with them. I say no to more. I use, just so you know, I use a tool called Motion.
okay,
Uh, it's like getmotion.com or something like that. And as I have thoughts of tasks or projects and I don't feel like it's the time to do it, rather than procrastinating it, I'll put it into Motion and it will auto schedule it for me. And it helps
yeah,
me get the thoughts out of my head so I'm not thinking about it. And I get to it when the before the deadline appears most
right,
of the time. Sometimes I don't. And sometimes I don't because I don't need to do it at all.
right,
And I just let it pass. And but for me, I don't look any different, but people who I've been around sense something different
yeah.
in me. It's me without a lot of my doubt. I still have some of it, unfortunately, and it's getting to me.
Need
And it
one more
comes,
visit.
yeah, and it comes and goes. But
Yeah,
I feel a lot
right.
more power, a lot more power.
Yeah,
I feel a lot more humble. I don't feel like I need to fake anything in life. I just am me. But it's a practice. I remember the first couple nights after coming back, I was feeling a lot of tension because of the way my wife was perceiving me
yeah,
and being me, truly, truly me, for the first time in our relationship ever.
Yeah.
and judged hard for it was very difficult.
I'm
Very,
sure it
very.
was.
I remember going in our room and doing some breath work. And one thing you do at Rhythmia, one of the breath works is you hold your breath, and as you let it out, instead of just letting it out, you let your body move and you scream and you just let
Hmm.
everything out.
Yeah.
We're doing that and freaking her out and freaking my family out. And my like, what's going on? And I was like, Janley, I don't need your judgment right now. I just need space,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know? And that
Right.
that was a turning moment for me. Like, yeah, I'm super quirky.
Hmm.
Being me is weird, right? My dance is super, super weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when people critique me, it's because they're right,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But I don't care if they're critiquing my moves. Like, they can't critique my soul
No.
when I'm dancing. And
No.
that's what I'm connecting with. I'm not connecting with the moves,
Yeah.
connecting with the music and here.
Yeah.
Right? And I've been able to slowly peel off those preconceptions and judgments of other people and feel more and more comfortable practicing being me in real life, not just by myself. And that's been an amazing practice for me.
Speaking of the dancing part, I had mentioned it earlier on that last day we did the liberation dance, and that was the first time I had danced in about 15 years, and it was amazing. Now, am I gonna go in my driveway and start dancing to some music in front of my neighbors? Probably not.
I do. I do.
You you've already said it. You're quirky and you're owning it. I'm still working on owning it. That's another part of my journey that I need to work on.
Maybe that's
Uh,
why you can't connect with your thumb yet. No, I'm just kidding.
maybe I'll practice. Maybe I'll start practicing at night before I go to bed. Yeah.
Mm.
And then
It's
the
like
next podcast
athletes.
we'll do, I'll suck my thumb the whole time.
Athletes don't practice in front of the world. They practice either on their own or with a team that understands their intentions,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Do the same. And eventually you'll feel like that practice will become reality and you'll be able to be you, truly you, and me too. I'm speaking to you, but I'm really speaking to myself here.
Yeah.
And I tell myself often this, eventually I'll be comfortable being me anywhere. And that's a beautiful insight for my future.
That's a goal. That's a very good goal to have. And having goals for your own personal um, growth is super important, and it's something that I never had throughout my 20s, and that's a really good call out. And that's I'm gonna take something from that for sure. So, well, Tyler, I really appreciate your time today. We should do this again soon and just kind of track our progress.
Yeah, for
It,
sure. Now that we got the whole story out of the way, we can dive into the present, which is
correct.
the past is a fun story, but it's a means
Hmm.
to the present.
Yeah, of
Next time we meet, I would really love to talk about our presence,
course.
and not the past and not the future, because that's more beautiful than the stories that we just shared, and those are fun too.
They are. They are. So, to everybody that was watching, appreciate you sticking with us throughout our story. Tyler and I will be on again. Give a like, a subscribe, and a comment, and let's grow these stories. We'll be back shortly. Thank you.